Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sutherland Report once again. Thank you so kindly for joining me. And I'm extremely excited to have a dear friend of mine on in a minute, and I will bring him on. I just want to ask you to click subscribe, follow me on this great big worldwide internet while we have it. So I am going to now bring on Chad Riley, a filmmaker extraordinaire and a dear friend, and we're going to discuss his work. Chad, my dear brother, how are you?
Doing pretty good. How you doing, brother?
I'm very well. I do apologize that I was suddenly shouting as if because I suddenly thought I was shouting across the thousands of miles that separate us in our undisclosed locations, which we won't reveal where we are. Anyway, you're looking extremely well. The last time I saw you was I've seen you physically in last summer, and that was a real delight to see you and your dear wife. So thank you very much indeed for your hospitality again, Chad. I have had the privilege of watching your documentary, which is over 2 hours long, and I was watching that. So, Chad, can you tell us who you are? Can you introduce yourself? Can you tell us all where we can find you? I think I'm hoping I have put the link to your film via Vimeo for people they can buy and download in the description. So go ahead, my friend. Tell everybody who you are.
Sure. My name is Chad Riley. I'm work with my wife. We have our own ministry called Truth Seekers Research Ministry. Worked on previous films in the past. I also did a Christian radio podcast for about 4.5 years called Deception Detection Radio. But have worked on films such as Hollow Earth Chronicles, Episode One, The Dark Chambers. Have worked on Belly of the Beast, and have also worked on Higher Entities, The Lost Tapes. And my newest film that just released is called Skinwalkers and Stranger Things of the Unseen Realm. And it is now available on Vimeo. If you don't have the link, you're watching this video, somebody else has copied it and uploaded it. You can go to Google and type in Vimeo and then type in Skinwalkers and Stranger Things of the Unseen Realm, and you can easily find the link.
Brilliant. Chad, you listed a number of films that they they have a theme through them, don't they? When we're talking about Hollow Earth and all the rest, entities, etc. Without sounding a bit of a stupid question, could you lay out what the theme is through all these films, through all the projects that you've been involved with? And could you explain why you focus on this area?
Sure. The theme is basically Genesis 6. We get into the fallen angels that came down in the days of Jared, that descended on Mount Hermon. In the film, I get into the highest temple that has ever been found up on Mount Hermon, and a oath stone that was actually discovered up there. And the oath stone, it said that those who proceed from here take an oath, and it basically talks about Simyaza and them taking the oath that they were all basically agreed that they would be cursed for what they were about to do. It was basically a you can think of it as a commando unit that was sent here by Satan to blot out the coming Messiah. And that's exactly what the 200 fallen angels did. They came here to blot out the coming Messiah and to make God a liar.
I find it fascinating because um, over here within the UK, where I am, I would say that until recently, this isn't a subject that is discussed. Genesis 6, verses 1 to 8, the fallen angels come down to earth and have sex with human women. Um, and on a personal level, when I read those verses for the first time in 2010, that I'm not, yeah, or it hit me in a really new way. I'd never understood fully that completely and utterly changed my life. And then suddenly it's like, wow. It's a bit like, as in the days of Noah, as we say to Jesus, when will we know of your return? But as in the days of Noah, and then beginning to look at the flood in different ways. So, Chad, going to your documentary, because this is a subject, as I say, it's not really discussed over here, but it is discussed in American circles and beyond. Watching the movie and then seeing Aleister Crowley, then seeing your reference and the footage you have of a white witch from the New Forest in that part of the UK that I do know fairly well. Crowley, what was he up to from 1906? What was this particular individual up to roundabout from 1906 to the beginning of the First World War?
Crowley was taking a page out of Dr. John Dee, and he was tapping into what John Dee referred to as Enochian entities, or the Enochian language, and they were trying to make contact with angels, is what they believe, but they referred to them as Enochian entities, and they were trying to tap into these powers, and summoning these entities and bringing them forth. Now, in 1918, I believe, is when Crowley summoned the first entity, which was Lamb, or not Lamb, Aiwass. He summoned Aiwass, and Aiwass dictated the book of the law to him. And when the book of the law, from what Kenneth Grant said, it was to usher in the coming of the Antichrist, to lay the foundation for the Antichrist, and talked about abortion as well as goodness, the oh goodness,
Don't worry. Who was Grant? Who was Grant? Could you explain who he was?
yeah, Kenneth Grant was the one who took over Thelema, and whenever Crowley died, he was actually his understudy, his secretary. And when Crowley died, he took over Thelema, the Thelema Society, and also I think took over OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis, as well. But I know what I was trying to say. The communism. Communism and abortion were to lay the foundation for the upcoming Antichrist, and they referred to abortion as the baptism of blood. Same thing with World War I and World War II. That's where I was trying to go with this. So that's what this is what Crowley believed, and Kenneth Grant even said this in his book, Aleister Crowley and the Hidden God. He lays this out and says that when the Book of the Law came out before World War I, Crowley was convinced that it had something to do with World War One and that it was fueling something. And so he re-released the book before World War II. And when World War II erupted, not long after he released the second the second time he released the Book of the Law, then he was pretty much convinced that this had something to do with ushering in the end times, as well as bringing about the son of perdition.
So I mean, there were so many things in the documentary, and the other question I haven't asked you, which is one thing I should have kicked off, and also to praise you as a filmmaker, creative. I know how much work goes into this kind of thing, and it is just mind-boggling. It is a heck of a lot of work, because you've had to get all the clips, do all the research, and then work out when you're producing this how all of this is going to come together scripturally, script wise, to then tell your story. How long has this product taken you to make and complete?
I set out about a year and a half ago to make this film, and I had about 480 pages of notes that I had to condense down to about 88 pages. And finally, there towards the end, I had to lock myself in the room for about a week and just work around the clock to just say, That's it, I'm done. What I have is what I have, and I'm just going to put it out. That's it. Not adding any more to it.
How did you feel when you had completed it?
I mean, it's that's the thing. As a anybody who creates something, whether it be a piece of music or film or whatever, it's like you're never truly happy with it.
Mm.
There's so much more I wish I could have put in there, and there was things that had to hit the cutting room floor. But I'd say overall, I'm happy that it's finally completed. It's out, and I hope that it answers a lot of people's questions. But most and first and foremost, I hope that it edifies people, and I hope that it leads people to Jesus Christ first and foremost.
Amen. Amen. What are the questions? I mean, we'll come to it because to unfold more of the documentary. But what do you think some of the questions people have been asking? I mean, especially in the light of, as you've got the footage of Tucker there, you brought it right up to date in regard to the recent congressional committees and the exposure. But what are the big? Maybe that's a clue. What are the questions you think people are asking?
Well, it's not so much the question that they're asking. It's it has a it's I would say it's more or less the things that people are fascinated by, and the things that people are interested and fascinated by. A lot of that stuff is in this film. We touch and we talk about a lot of it. Um, but it's all interconnected. That's the biggest thing that a lot of people don't fully understand, is that this is all completely 100% interconnected, and you can't have one without the other. And that was one of the things. I started out just to make a film about Skinwalker Ranch. That was it. I was just going to do a film on Skinwalker Ranch, and that quickly led into so many different directions, because while I was reading the books on Skinwalker Ranch, then I started reading stuff about remote viewers. Well, remote viewing led me into UFOs and aliens. The next thing you know, then I'm into the occult, the esoteric. And I mean, it just quickly spiraled out of control real quickly. And like I said, after about 15 books, 480 pages of notes, and other academic stuff that I was looking at as well, I finally had to just start assembling this and trying to put it into one cohesive thought.
Because I mean, I can ask you your book references, but it also makes me. I've got to go through the film, write things down, or I might try the cheap way and just ask you direct. But I want to encourage people to do that, which is to write notes, and actually say, well, what is this book he's drawing on, and actually go and get that book. Go and get the research. Could you explain remote viewing, and can you talk about what you disclosed there when this particular individual doing that, this submarine, this whole Russian submarine, which is fascinating. But could you explain that part of your documentary?
Yeah, remote viewing started out at Stanford Research Institute. Was a individual by the name of Hal Puthoff, who had worked in naval intelligence and also worked, I believe, had done some work for the NSA. He had met an individual named Ingo Swann, and Ingo Swann also um, had dabbled around with some of this. For those who are not familiar with what remote viewing is, it's literally, um, oh goodness, I am just drawing blanks today, but it's think of it like astral projection.
Right.
You can leave your body and you can go anywhere, anywhere you want, and you can literally hear somebody on the other side of the planet and listen to what they are discussing, what they are talking about. It's as if you're sitting right there beside them. So it started out as a way to spy. They used it for spying when they first brought it about, and eventually it morphed into something like psycho assassins. So they were wanting to use the ability to travel, astrally project, and go to different locations and to kill people with the power of the mind. So, like I said, that's how it all came about. But here's the interesting kicker that I didn't realize, or I never really had heard anybody else discuss, was that most of the people that were working in remote viewing were all members of Scientology. And this is stuff, there are techniques that they had learned through Scientology. Like Hal Puthoff and Ingo Swann were both OT7s. That's the highest rank you can reach in Scientology. And even Pat Price, who was the head remote viewer that they had at SRI, he was an OT3. So that was something that I did not know. I had never heard that a lot of the remote viewers had previous training in Scientology. So when you realize that,
Sorry.
well, you know where I'm going with this. It's like that leads into what's the name? L. Ron Hubbard. And L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons were both understudies of Aleister Crowley. They both were part of Thelema and the OTO. And in fact, they're the ones who did the Babylon working ritual that supposedly brought about the end time, because it was Charles Ray's Tussle, or was it Charles, the head person of Jehovah's Witness, Charles Ray's Tussle or Charles Taze Russell. Anyways, he had made a prediction that the end of the world would begin on October 2nd, 1914. That was a belief that they all held, the Jehovah's Witnesses held. And when October 2nd, 1914 came, that was the date that Jack Parsons was born. Now, how fitting would it be that he would do the Babylon working ritual to bring about the end times and the son of perdition, and referred to himself as the Antichrist, and that Aleister Crowley referred to himself as the Beast 666. Coincidence? I don't know.
I don't think it was. When you talk about like OTO3, these levels within Scientology, what do they think they're progressing to, and how do they progress then? Not that I am encouraging any of that and any of that occult practice, not at all. But it's just understanding what is going through these people's minds.
Well, it's not OTO, it's OT. So
OT,
that's
sorry.
they're called OT7. OT7 is the highest you can go in Scientology. It's like you can't go any higher than that. Like Tom Cruise is an OT7. So like I said, it's like you max out when you hit OT7. But yeah, you'll go broke before you ever even get OT7. You got to have lots and lots of money and lots of power to even get mixed up in Scientology for the most part.
So there, L. Ron Hubbard, Parsons are, they're being taught by Crowley. I didn't realize that until, frankly, I watched your documentary. I didn't realize that. I knew there's overlap, but this is what you're saying about your documentary, what it reveals and what it reveals. Chad, can we get into the Thule Society and what that was, and how that then influenced the Nazis and their occult practice?
Yeah, you're talking about the Thule Society?
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
right. Sorry,
yeah, the Thule?
it's my British accent. It's my British
No, that's
accent,
fine.
brother.
I just wanted to make sure that that was where you were wanting to go.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
the Thule, the Vril Society, the SS, Honor Nurbe, all that. That was these are all different branches, but all part of the same pyramid. And each one did specific things. Like the Honor Nurbe, that was like their archaeologists. Think of it like the Nazi Indiana Jones out there scouring the planet, not just for ancient texts, but also particular objects. Like they wanted the Spear of Destiny, which was the spear that supposedly pierced the side of Christ. I mean, they were out there looking for the Ark of the Covenant, you name it. So it's very reminiscent of the original Indiana Jones or Raiders of the Lost Ark. But the Thule Society was more the esoteric part of the Nazis. They did a lot of the channeling and seances and so on. And there was a group of women called the Vril Maidens that were members of the Thule Society. and two of them, their names was Maria Orsic and Sigram. And these two ladies were tasked with making contact with a dead SS officer that had been captured and killed before he had a chance to relay whatever information that he was trying to apprehend at the time or already had. But he never got to report it to his chain of command before he died. So they tasked these two Vril maidens with making contact with him and to obtain the information. Well, while they were doing this, they supposedly made contact with some entity that said it rained from the Aldebaran system. And they said that they began to exhale ectoplasm, that there was like this mist coming out of their mouths and their noses, and that their eyes rolled back in their head, and they both began to start automatic writing. And when they started automatic writing, one was writing in an ancient Sumerian language, and the other one was writing in an ancient Templar language. And when they got done writing everything down, it took them years to basically translate this, because the ancient Templar language had gone pretty much dead. So it took them a little longer to translate that one. But when they finally translated it, one was the blueprints on how to build the Hanabu, which is a UFO craft. Which, if you can go online, you can find footage of the 1932 test flight where they built one of these, and it's actually flying around in Nazi Germany. And there's also the other one that they translated, the Sumerian one. It was the blueprints on how to build the Die Glocke, which they refer to as the bell. And this was some sort of a interdimensional type craft that could jump between dimensions. So
Right, I hear. I mean, I've heard of the bell because other people, like dark journalists, talk about the bell on quite extensively. So we've got that society. Can you expand on the occult practice of Nazis? Because where we need to end up is, everyone talks about Operation Paperclip, but let's have a reminder of that. So if you start at what the Nazis were into, and then we'll end up at what happened in regard to Operation Paperclip and after the Second World War.
Well, first and foremost, it's important to understand what did they believe. And that's the thing. Most people think that the Nazis, this was all about eugenics and white power and all that cuckoo nonsense. It had nothing to do with that. These people actually believed that they were the descendants of the Nephilim bloodlines, that they were the remnant royal bloodlines of the Nephilim. And the reason why this is all important is because Helena Blavatsky talked about the root races. This is another thing that they were really looking into, was the whole thing about the root races. Well, the Aryans were the descendants of the Atlanteans. And according to Blavatsky in her book, Secret Doctrine, Volume 2, there's a book that's part of that, inside that book, called the Book of Dizion. Well, in the Book of Dizion, which was ancient Tibetan manuscripts that she had translated, it said that the Atlanteans built statues as tall as their bodies, and that the statues were 9 yardis high. Well, a yadi translates to 3 feet, so a meter. And so 3 times 9 is 27 feet tall. So the Atlanteans were 27 feet tall, which directly ties them into Genesis 6 and the Nephilim. And that's, the predecessor to the Aryans. So the Aryans were descendants of theirs, so therefore making them Nephilim bloodlines. And that's what they believed, that they were the remnant of the Nephilim bloodlines. So that's what fueled them. That's what they were trying to tap into, is this fallen angel bloodline technology power.
I had never thought of the whole thing of the Atlanteans, their size, and you've just hit the nail on the head. You've just answered the question, which is some of the questions maybe some people will be asking before they watch their documentary. It's Nephilim. It's Nephilim. It's the fallen angels.
Yeah.
What technology did the Atlanteans have? Because someone once explained to me that they had electricity and all the rest.
I mean, that's the thing, depending on where you're looking at. But I mean, they were, according to Plato and everything, the Egyptians and so on. They believed that they were light years ahead of everybody else, and that was the thing, is that there was 10 kings that ruled over Atlantis. So I mean, it just depends on how far you wanted to really get into it. But there's not a lot of it is conjecture. There's no way of proving some of the stuff that people say about Atlantis. But like I
Right.
said, the whole thing about the Book of Dizzion, Helena Blavatsky, she did travel the world. She was getting her hands on a lot of these ancient manuscripts and translating them and writing them
Mm.
into books. And like I said, this is why the Nazis not only looked at her research, but they sent their own people out there to verify and to challenge a lot of this stuff. That's what the sole purpose of the Ahnenerbe was to go out there and verify a lot of the information. In fact, they went a little bit further than what she did, but that's a story for another time.
So, I mean, that's why you made reference to Raiders of the Lost Ark and all the rest. And we remember at the end of that feature film, you remember, the big warehouse, and then the Ark of the Covenant is in a box and it's just shoved into this massive warehouse into a corner. Most probably that warehouse was owned by the Smithsonian Institute Museum, but I can't possibly say that live on air, can I? That must be all conjecture. So we've gone so from the Nazis, and you said it brilliantly about their religion, what they were then into. Of course, they were into green politics before Greta Thunberg now. So what about Operation Paperclip? With Annie Jacobsen wrote a book about that, of course, seminal book about Operation Paperclip. But the fact that the relevance of that and where we are now is how I see it is so relevant. And I end up turning around and saying who actually won the war, but which is another subject in itself. So Operation Paperclip, Chad, what then happened after the Second World War?
Well, that's the thing, is people want to say the Nazis lost the war. Well, they didn't technically lose the war. They just changed zip codes. So some of them came to America, others fled down to Antarctica. And what is it? The ones that came over here under Operation Paperclip to the United States, a vast majority were absorbed into the OSS, which was the predecessor to the CIA. So keep that in mind. That a vast chunk of these Nazis, and these weren't like nobody Nazis. These were like some of the most sought after, highly, that were into some pretty deep and dark and disturbing stuff. And we not only paid for them to be moved over here and brought their families with them, but we put them in positions of power in one of the most powerful agencies here in the United States. Because OSS becoming the CIA, we know how powerful the CIA is today. If they can kill a sitting president, I don't think there's much they can't do.
And of course, the CIA was, I think, founded in 1947, I think, 47,
Yes.
48, by Truman, who soon after that, I think, regretted that really, because he was concerned about, here are his words, you tell me, he was concerned about the fact that that America was in fact creating its own Gestapo, basically. I think that is one of his concern, and of course, congressional oversight is just a laughing stock. To be honest, it's the same with the
Yeah.
FBI or any other three-letter agency. So they came over here, and they then got. Sorry, I'm saying here they came over to America. They went to Russia. Maybe some of those scientists actually came into Britain as well. What did they then get involved with on your side of the pond without saying the obvious, but what did they begin to get involved with? Because Vernon von Braun, head of Hitler's rocketry, then becomes what, sir?
He became one of the head people at NASA, but it wasn't just him. It was also his the person that was over him, which was Herman Oberth. Both pretty much ran NASA, or what would become NASA. Um, and that's the thing is, these gentlemen, like you got Herman Oberth saying we can't take credit for all of our advancements and um, this field or whatever stuff. He said, and when they asked him, they said, well, been helped by who? He said, people from another world. And he even made references about these gigantic aircraft carrier type craft, which would look like cigars. And he talked about UFOs stacking up inside them like plates, like in a dishwasher. And just some of the things that they were saying back then were just so off the cuff and just off the walls. And I still to this day I can't believe that people weren't flipping out some of the things that they were saying. But yeah, the the Nazis that came over under Project Paperclip, they started getting into and keep in mind, I make this point in the film that it wasn't just the Nazis when they got here. America was already doing a lot of this stuff. I talk about some of the different things like the Tuskegee experiment, where they fed the radioactive oatmeal to children that lived in an orphanage, and several other cases where I just show a systematic pattern where we were already on our way, but once the Nazis got over here and joined up with us, it just seemed to kick it into overdrive. And that was the thing, is that they were doing sadistic and horrible experiments on not just regular men or military people, but women and children, and some of them unborn children. And then they were spraying radioactive particles in St. Louis, Missouri, um, doing the same thing in Corpus Christi, Texas. I mean, we can sit here and have a whole show just talking about some of this stuff, but I mean, this is very real. And it's like, people like to say, well, I don't believe that they would be getting into satanic rituals, or they would be doing demonic rituals. It's just too far out there. It's like, well, if they're willing to poison their own citizens and spray them with radioactive particles, at this point, I don't think we can really rule anything out. And I present a very compelling case that they were not only actively engaged in satanic rituals and bringing about things into this dimension and making contact, but that they not only were doing these things, they actually succeeded.
Wow. I hadn't realized that. You've laid a very, I hadn't realized that until watching it, where you were talking about, as you just said, what the Americans were involved with before they then brought over the Nazis from Germany. What was their motivation? What was their motivation behind all the things that they were starting to do? Like, as you say, spraying members of the American citizenry. Uh, what was their motivation behind all that? Who was that from? Alice Bailey, Theosophy, and all the rest, and plus, the eugenics movement. Was it all part of that ideology, Jed?
Not necessarily so much about eugenics, it's that that's just how evil these people truly are. I mean, they don't have a moral compass. They don't have a conscience, and it's all about power for them. All they want is power, and they are working. You know, they are in lockstep with demonic entities, and they are working with Lucifer and his fallen angels, and they are doing exactly as they are instructed, so that they not only receive power, but they are also receiving technology. That's why the US government is light years ahead of anybody else when it comes to technology. They have things that most people can't wrap their heads around. I mean, the crash at Roswell rendered so much technology. It's astounding. It's like when the first transistor came out, the first cell phone, all these things came out in 1947 after they retrieved the Roswell crash. And that's the thing is most people, they hear the Roswell crash, they think one UFO. It wasn't just one UFO. It was multiple UFOs. There was a collision. And in fact, one of them was found several miles away because after it collided with the one, it went so far off course. I mean, they didn't find it for a week until weeks after this all went down. And when you start looking into this, it's like that's where it really starts getting trippy because it's like you have the Kenneth Arnold sighting where he sees the 9 craft flying over Mount Rainier, Washington. And it's only like 2 weeks later, not even fully 2 weeks later, that the Roswell crash occurs. Well, then you find out that, what is it? Kenneth Arnold is actually flying buddies with Jack Parsons. And there has been several people out there who have made that statement and said that, these people knew one another. Kenneth Arnold and Jack Parsons knew one another. Not only that, but they also had a third mutual friend named Robert Goddard, who was also a rocket pioneer who was out of Roswell. So you got 3 individuals who all know one another. And like I said, you just can't make this stuff up. I mean, seriously, you really can't.
Could you just explain who Kenneth Arnold is and Parsons is? Could you explain who they are?
Yeah, Kenneth Arnold was one of the first people that he saw 9 craft flying over Mount Rainier, Washington. This is where we get the vernacular flying saucers, because he said it looked like saucers skipping on a pond, and there that stuck. Then we got the term flying saucers. So he was very well known. In fact, here's another kicker that I found out when I was looking into Skinwalker Ranch and the hitchhiker effect. Everybody thinks that the hitchhiker effect is something exclusive to Skinwalker Ranch. That's not the case. This is a far older part of the equation, and it ties into all of it. It ties into remote viewing. It ties into UFO sightings and close encounters. People that are having a vast or just a multitude of different kinds of experiences are all suffering the same thing. And the whole thing about the hitchhiker effect is that people that would go out to Skinwalker Ranch, whenever they would come back from there, they would bring something back with them. That's where this term came from, the hitchhiker effect. So you had an individual who went out there, and in the book they refer to him as Axelrod, but it's finally come out, and I'll put that in the film, that his name is actually Jay Stratton, which he's a very, very key figure.
Sorry to interrupt. Could you explain Skywalker Ranch? Can you explain what it is, the things that were going on there?
Yeah, Skinwalker Ranch is one of the most paranormal hotspots on the planet, and it's not exclusive to just Skinwalker Ranch. There's actually a total of several ranches out there. You got Moonshadow, you got Stardust, you got Bradshaw, you got Skinwalker, you got Blind Frog. All these ranches all fall on a straight line, and they all have these paranormal, weird things going on out there, that these portals open up in the sky, and you can see into another world when these portals open up. I mean, imagine it being nighttime and all of a sudden this portal opens up. It looks like a big rectangular window in the sky, and it's daytime on the other side, and you can see things moving around on the other side. So, and then there's craft flying in and out of these portals. You have portals opening up and cryptids and all sorts of bizarre things climbing out of these things and dropping down into the middle of the field, running across one side of the field to another side of the field, and then another portal opens up and it jumps inside and disappears. I mean, seriously, the and some of the creatures that they talked about seeing that supposedly have gone extinct, like the dire wolves that they've said that they've seen out there. Now, these aren't just regular wolves. A dire wolf is extremely large. I mean, think of a moose. If you can picture how big a moose can get, that's how big these things are, and it's a wolf. So yeah, lots of bizarre things going on out there. But back to the Skinwalker or the hitchhiker effect. So once you leave this location and you go back home wherever you live,
Hmm.
it doesn't attack you personally. It attacks your family members, your friends, and it spreads out through your family members and friends and so on, coworkers, whatever. It spreads like a virus, but you never know what you're going to get when it comes to the hitchhiker effect. It could be anything. It could be shadow people walking around in your bedroom at night, stomping up and down the stairs, poltergeist activity. It could be dogmen. It could be orbs. It could be UFOs outside your house. It could be anything. You never know what you're going to get. So when I was looking at this whole thing about the hitchhiker phenomenon, that was one of the very things that kind of took me off in a direction, because I found out some of the very first people to encounter the hitchhiker effect were the early pioneers in remote viewing. They were encountering this. So, like scientists that were studying the remote viewers, like Uri Geller and some of them, these scientists were going home and they were seeing things manifest in their house. Their family members were experiencing it, and so on. And then I found out that it even predated that to Kenneth Arnold. Kenneth Arnold wrote about it in his book, and then his daughter has gone on and done interviews on different programs, and she even said that they had suffered poltergeist activity and this hitchhiker effect and just all sorts of bizarre things after he saw these 9 craft flying over Mount Rainier, Washington.
Wow. In regard to Uri Geller, was he so what was his background then? Was he a scientist or what? You just mentioned that.
No, Uri Geller was mixed up with the remote viewing program. They brought him over, and yeah, that's a whole nother story. That's going to be in my next film, where I'm going to get
Right.
into is that he was part of. He came over and he was really good friends with Purich. Well, Purich, he got he oh goodness, yeah, he was mixed up with so many people. I mean, seriously, you can't even make this story up. That he was mixed up with what's his name, the guy that supposedly killed Kennedy, Oswald.
Oswald, right.
Oswald was part of their group. So was Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek. So it's like, seriously, I mean, and these people were making contact with a group called the Council of Nine. And like I said, that's going to be the next film that I'm going to be working on, is going to be on the Nine, and I'm going to blow that sucker wide open.
And would that be include the Majestic 12 and all that rabbit hole as well?
Nah, Majestic 12 was that was a group of military people that were to secure the information that had to do with UFOs and what they were doing. Keep in mind that they were running their own investigation back when a lot of this stuff was, when it got into the whole thing with not Kenneth Arnold, with Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard. When they were investigating him, this is where they were running up against a program that they never came right out and said it, but they knew that this was not just these individuals, but they knew that they were running up against I guess you could say satanic ritual. That the people were doing satanic rituals to bring about contact with these entities, and it wasn't just L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons, even though they had taken the Amalantra working, which was the ritual that Aleister Crowley did back in 1918. And when they were doing the Babylon working ritual, they had tweaked his Amalantra working, and they not only opened or let me rephrase this the best way I possibly can. They ripped a hole in space time when they performed it, and they were actually successful. This went on between the years 1945 and 1946. They kept trying to perfect and to be successful with this ritual. Now, this ritual was to bring about the Antichrist. That was the sole purpose, was to bring about the son of perdition. And finally they were successful, but what they did was they ripped a hole in space-time, and something to do with his Alma launch were working, they widened. They not only ripped a hole in space time, but they widened it. And whoever opens the portal has to be the one to close it. Well, that never happened because Parsons didn't know near as much as Aleister Crowley. So he not only didn't shut it, but even L. Ron Hubbard had made he said that thou shalt become the or that something along the lines like I'm not thinking of it right now because I don't have the quote in front of me, but he said that Babylon will incarnate when you become the living flame.
Right.
And that was a prediction that L. Ron Hubbard had made. Well, that came to fruition when Parsons blew himself up. Now, they say that it had something to do with a experiment that he was doing in his mansion out there in Orange Grove County. But there's conjecture, and people have stated. In fact, my friend Harvey, that I'm staying with currently right now, he had brought up the point that when supposedly when he blew up, that when they went in there and they were searching the scene, they didn't find any chemicals or anything like that. That it looked like he was performing some sort of ritual, and he had all these occult books that were strewn everywhere. That that he might have been doing something along the lines of a ritual, and it just went awry and caused an explosion. So can't rule
Wow.
that one out either.
Well, we're coming into the last few minutes. I just want to give a shout out to the chat and um your lovely wife is in there, and also our mutual friend Audrey RV. So I just want to give a shout out there. But a really lovely comment that Audrey said that about your documentary. What is wonderful about it is that you've got all this information in one place, and I think that is a real compliment to you. And also Jody has written a point to say that, and I've got to put my glasses on to read, it's also like a masterclass. I have a clearer understanding on the subject matter. So that is, this is really important. We all need feedback. But as Audrey and and Jodie's saying as well, and others, and the fact that the key thing is that the information is there. Habadi Music, thank you. The information is there for us to use, and you have very kindly made that. Well, you and I will be having quite a lot of conversations. I would really appreciate that, because there are so many different avenues to go down. And I just want to quickly join one up for people. I have banged on about this, and hopefully this won't get us kicked off or anywhere or centered, even though I am centered. The issue where we tie up with what's happened over the last few years with the this shot. The fact that IG Farben, the industrial powerhouse behind Nazi Germany, headed up by Karl Duisberg, who was the CEO of Bayer, then they financed the industrial might, and they came together as a conglomerate to protect their pharmaceutical industry, basically, their chemical industries, etc. And of course, then, as you know, that led to the experiments in Auschwitz and all the rest. But it's this whole tie-up when experimenting on human beings, and how we look back over the last few years, we'll leave it like that, trying to get around the censors of a particular subtlety of trying to push people in a direction to take something as an experiment that has then changed them, has then affected them. And as you said, no, who won the war? I said that. It's how they then remorphed. So all of that line is now, it's happening. There's a fantastic book by Dermot Jeffries called Hell's Cartel I encourage everyone to go and get it because it goes into that. As we close, Chad, thank you so much for an amazing conversation, which we will continue. Can you remind people where they can find you? Mention the movie again, mention the documentary again, and mention where we can get it.
Yeah, the film is available on Vimeo right here, right now. Anywhere in the world, you can go and you can purchase it right now and begin watching it. It's 2.5 hours long, or 2 hours and 32 minutes long. Um, and again, like I said, it's it's worth every penny because, like I said, I wish I could have made it 4 hours long, but I needed to get it done and get it put out. But rest assured that I will be back at it again. I'll be working on the next one soon enough. Just need to get this one up and running. But yeah, if you go on Vimeo and or just go on Google and type in Vimeo and then type in Skinwalkers and Stranger Things of the Unseen Realm, and you can easily find it. And I pray that you find it edifying. And if anybody out there that's interested and fascinated by these subjects, I hope that you watch it. I hope that you find it just mind blowing, but at the same time, I hope that it leads you to Jesus Christ. I hope that you eventually come to have a personal relationship with Jesus and give your life to him.
Chad, well said. What a wonderful way to end, and an encouragement to use your documentary for that calling, for that process. And as our dear friend Audrey has said in the chat, we look forward to part 2, part 3, and whatever, and just to encourage you in all that you do. Because the bottom line is, I know behind the scenes, doing this is not easy, and at times it's profoundly costly. And I just ask people to pray about that, and to for prayer cover in all these things, and also, as I know your friends do, but others, to appreciate the amount of effort that goes into this work. Very often the problem is so many people want things for nothing, and they have no idea of the creative process and the amount of hours and months and years that go into it. So I'm just looking at the chat again. I appreciate that. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining me. And Chad, I want to do this again, and I can we'll arrange that, and I'll ask you where next time we're together, where you want to take us, because I think, I mean, the subject, as you say, the subject is huge. So thank you for joining me, everybody. Please click like, subscribe, smash it, share it. Let's get it out there. And I'm just delighted to have been joined by a number of people in this broadcast. Chad, loads of love, my brother, and speak to you soon. Take care. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and God bless.